Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 21st episode of HSBC's extremely popular webinar series, Starstruck. I'm your host for the evening, and my name is Deepak Saroop. I'm particularly excited about today's session, not only because it's the first time that I'm hosting it, but also because we have a fantastic and exciting personality who has agreed to be our guest for the evening. I particularly am excited also because I have known him for over 15 years now, and maybe we'll have a chance to know him even better when we spend the next 60 odd minutes with him. Uh, to give you an introduction, he is a career banker, having had a very illustrious 2.5 decades of experience in banking. He started his career with ANZ Grindlays, has worked with Citibank and even HSBC. Yes, in fact, with HSBC as well. For that matter, he hired me here. He is currently the CEO of a leading listed NBFC. And if that wasn't exciting enough, he is also a noted, very highly regarded, and a best selling author. He has, in fact, pioneered a genre of writing in India, which is about suspense and thrillers in the banking sector. His first book, If God Was a Banker, paved the way for many other such exciting novels in the banking sector, and that has won him numerous accolades, awards, and a massive fan following and a readership across the country and even overseas. He's also been a columnist, uh, award winning author, like I said earlier, and in his most recent avatar, he is also mentoring and co authoring books with some new age budding writers. So, on that note, it gives me great pleasure to have on board someone who I've known personally and regarded for over 15 years now, someone who is an exciting personality, a best selling author, and possibly, as his fans like to call him, India's John Grisham. Ladies and gentlemen, Ravi Subramanian.
Hi, Deepak. Thank you very much for having me on your show. It's a great pleasure to be here. And
Hey, Ravi.
thank you very much for such a wonderful introduction. I keep telling my wife that writing will get me to a certain place where banking can never get me. She never believes me. If she's watching this show, maybe she'll now start believing it. So, yeah, thank you very much for.
Superb. I hope ज़्यादा नहीं बोला and I hope कम नहीं बोला. Okay, so before we get going with you, Ravi, it's important to also welcome our viewers, audience, and many of whom are our customers, who are our colleagues across India as well as overseas, and also a large part of your fan base who have possibly dialed in to today's session. So a warm welcome to you all as well. Just a quick update before we all start getting to know Ravi better. If you have any questions that you would like me to pose to him, there would be a question box at the bottom of your screen that you should possibly use to put in your questions, and I'll be happy to pose them to Ravi. And if you just want to simply pass on some comments, some regard, love, and appreciation for Ravi or for HSBC, use the chat box, please. So, just a reminder, questions go into the question box, and your comments go into the chat box. Okay, so I think we're set. So, on that note, Ravi, like your introduction, we spoke about the fact that banker to start with, and then author as well. So tell us more about it. How did that start? Where did it all begin?
Well, Deepak, writing for me was, I keep saying this to many other people as well, that for me, my life has been a series of joyous accidents. And writing was one such joyous accident. Had somebody said that, Ravi, you would end up being a writer maybe 20 years back or 25 years back, I would have laughed. Okay, and thought the guy was drunk. But somewhere when I was actually working with HSBC about 15 years back is when I actually started writing. In fact, till I was 35, 36, I hadn't even, the thought hadn't even crossed my mind, though I always wanted to become a writer, largely, largely because I thought, people don't remember corporate CEOs, people don't remember people who work in the world of finance after they're gone, and but in the space of fine arts people are remembered, and I just wanted to have one book somewhere in the corner of the world reminding people that somebody called Ravi Subramanian walked the planet. I guess that was the desire or the need to be remembered which pushed me on that path. But and that's how A God was a banker happened, and that was I think 2007. And
Yeah.
once that happened, the book became an overnight success. Kind of sold out a lot of copies. People started reading it, uh, and it's a well-known fact that success makes you greedy, I guess. So what now you start thinking that fine, I've written one story, people have liked it. Maybe if I write the second, maybe if I write the third, maybe if I write the fourth, people will start reading you more, and that's how one thing led to the other. And here I am, uh, what 13 books thus far, so I'm counting. So let's hope it's a long innings.
Yeah, I think I've seen the initial phases when you had actually taken to writing. And so on that note, you like you said, 13 books and counting. So where do these ideas, these thoughts, the inspiration come for various plots and themes? Because you've not just remained restricted to what you started off with, right, which is about writing about the banking sector. You've diversified into other genres of fiction. So I mean, where do these plots, these themes, these ideas come from?
Well, they come from around us. For example, when I'm writing a banking thriller, the key elements of the plots come from your day-to-day work, your interactions with people, and you'll be surprised when when people know that you write stories set in the world of banking, they come and tell you stories. In those days, I don't think the newspapers used to be full of banking scams. These days, you open a newspaper, it reads like a novel, right? But back in those days, newspapers were very different, and banking frauds were also not as publicized as they are these days. So, talking to people, your own experiences, your friends, your network, once you start writing thrillers, banking is a very, very fertile ground for thrillers, right? Because you start seeing that uh, when you want to write a thriller, you need people, you need relationships, you need frauds, you need investigation, you need crime, you need murders, you need sleaze, you need money. You know, all of that and more is in the world of banking. So, so banking formed the initial part of my entire research and plotting. Slowly and steadily, once you evolve in that field of writing, you start wondering as to, you know, uh, are you a good storyteller? Are you a good storyteller because you are writing in the world of banking to which you have a 20, 25-year-old exposure?
Yeah.
And that's when you start pushing yourself and saying, fine, let me try out new things. Let me experiment. And I have kind of uh, come to believe that any writer who kind of doesn't experiment or kind of just stays in his comfort zone is not doing justice. You write for 20 years, 25 years, and you actually write in the same field, in the same sphere, you tend to get a bit boring and a bit stale. So you have to keep challenging yourself, and you have to start pushing your boundaries. And that's when I started thinking of what to do, and I started looking at romance as an option, and I wrote a romance, though it eventually turned out to be a romantic thriller. It started off as a romance, and then I wrote a very interesting book on the Padmanabha Swami temple in Kerala,
Yeah.
which needed a fair bit of research, and it was a story which was completely out of the world of banking. So uh, I would like to keep challenging myself. I would like to keep writing stories outside the world of banking as well, just to give me comfort and confidence as yes, I can tell a story outside the world of banking as much as I can inside the world.
True. So to our, especially our banking folks who have dialed in today, if there's any masala you have, I think you know who to go to
Absolutely.
get some. Okay, so but talking about thrillers and suspense, this tag of India's John Grisham, I think that's something that you had spoken about yourself at some point in time, or is that something just about folklore, or what are your thoughts on that?
Somewhere, so I've read myself where it's mentioned that I had said that I would be very happy if the world remembers me as the John Grisham of banking. I hadn't said that, and there was a journalist who had said that, and it kind of just stuck because it went on to Wikipedia, and then after that, it did not come off it. I've tried to remove it a few times myself, but
But
somebody.
it's not a bad tag to have actually.
Yes, but Deepak, it kind of just puts a lot of pressure on you and kind of boxes you.
True.
So like Grisham is now, uh, kind of duty bound to write uh, uh, a book in the world of thrillers, in the world of legal thrillers. But if I'm called the John Grisham of banking, then I need to start writing more and more only in the field of banking and banking scams and banking thrillers. That's
Yeah.
not something which I would want to do forever, right? So I would want to
Yeah.
branch out, experiment new things. And so while to be very honest, it served the purpose. It kind of at least people stood up and took notice. But
Yeah.
the more I see it now, I would say it's more of a drag right now rather than a strength. So yes, there was a time when I
We'll keep it aside for a while then.
yeah. So
Okay. So before we get on to some more questions, rather from my side, I think it's time to once again remind our audience that if you have any questions for Ravi, please do put them up in the chat box, and we can see that some of them have already started coming in, which I will pick up in a short while from now. So going back, Ravi, to your 13 odd books and cutting across various forms of writing, any characters that stand out as your personal favorites, or maybe just one character that you feel is something that you really enjoyed writing about and presenting as part of your storyline?
there was actually multiple characters, but if I were to choose one of all the characters that I've created, um that character would be the character of Swami in my first book, which is If God Was a Banker.
Yeah.
Uh, Swami was like me, a Tambran uh, from one of the leading MBA institutes in the country, joins a premier foreign bank, and uh, stays in the bank till he actually is probably forced out. And he actually does all the right things. He does not put a wrong foot forward, and he's highly ethical, very moral, and tries to correct people who do all the wrong things in life. And eventually, he ends up the winner. So he loses a lot of battles along the way. So it was a good versus evil story where Swami was everything a good banker could be. And sadly, it's very difficult to find a banker like Swami or a person like Swami. But he's my favorite. My second most favorite. How can I miss it? Is a character called Deepak Swarup in one of my books.
I knew this was coming.
So yeah, that's right. The incredible banker. The hero of this book is a guy called Deepak Swarup. So
You can't call him a hero, firstly. You can't call him a hero.
yeah, I can't call him a hero, but nevertheless, yeah, the key character in the book is Deepak Swarup.
Ravi, that particular book actually got me some crazy amount of attention and a
Really?
lot of notoriety as well. And I had to keep explaining to people because the most common question would be, we thought Ravi was a good friend and a good senior of yours. What happened? So to say, hold on, guys, this is all with consent and completely. In fact, my parents themselves were shocked when they read the book and they said, "Is this what you've come down to?" I said, "No, it's not me."
Yeah, I remember. I remember having taken consent before using your name there. I do use names of people that I know.
Yeah,
In fact, in a couple of books, uh, there were stories about uh, our risk head who used to work in. He's no longer in HSBC and now with one of the other leading banks as a CRO, and his wife. So interesting, good stories about Rajesh and Sharda in one of the books. And there are actually you can identify names of people whom I've worked with in those books. But people who have worked with me and been nice to me, they're all good names in the book. So I've never
with
messed
with with, with one exception, I guess.
one exception, and that was with consent. So I have no guilt feeling.
It cuts both ways, I guess. But on that note, I mean, how have other people reacted? So I took it with a pinch of salt because you and I had spoken about this before you actually penned that particular character in
Right.
that book.
Right.
But any other reactions from people who you've actually taken their names, albeit in a different way? I mean, it's not actually the same person whose name you're taking.
Yes. In fact, there was a very, very negative reaction from a very close friend on one of the characters in If God Was a Banker Again. And uh, when I had actually named that character with the person's name, this person, real life person, hadn't even crossed my mind. Okay, so I named that character, let's say X. So my friend X had not even crossed my mind when I named that person X. Now, but that character happened to be a negative character, and there was so much of speculation going around at that point in time that she called me and said, Ravi, you've named that character, given that character my name, and now people are speculating whether that character is me. So I had a tough time explaining that, look, if it was you or your life, I won't name that character as you.
Yeah. Okay,
So
so let's move on to something which is more interesting and gets more interactive for our audience who have dialed in today. The first question from the audience for you, Ravi, is, and it comes from Janet D. I
yeah.
hope I've got the name right. And she asks, why don't you own genres which are absolutely different? Because I feel you are brilliant and will be able to do justice to thrillers and horror as a genre which I feel is the toughest. Maybe we've touched upon it a bit right now, but happy to hear more from you.
So I have written about 9 thrillers in partly in banking and partly in non-banking space. Now I want to experiment with a lot more with some other genres. So I would not let go of banking thrillers per se. So my next book, which would come out in June next year, is a banking thriller. My next full-length novel would be a banking thriller, but I would want to experiment in a lot of other genres, as I said. And for
Yeah.
me, one of my favorites, which we'll probably talk about later, is writing for children.
Yeah. So, Janet, just hold on. Maybe later on in the session, you'll hear more about what Ravi is dabbling with outside of the genre that you spoke about. So, the next question from our audience is from Nagaraj. And his question, if I were to read it out, is, what is the trick or method to write elaborately? When I start writing, the entire topic will be over in a page.
So you are the ideal person to write thrillers, Nagaraj, because you know uh, the problem with most writers have is that they go on and on without knowing where to stop and where to end, and often they kind of what can be said in 10 lines, they actually write a couple of pages on it. So if you whatever you want to say gets over on a page, then maybe you should start saying a lot more and write a few pages about it. But yeah, but if you want to write, I would say that when you're starting to write and you don't know what to do, uh, think about a plot and then plot it down on an Excel worksheet in terms of the flow of characters, the flow of the plot, what would lead to what, and where you would insert red herrings, and where you would start, who gets killed, who doesn't get killed, who's the murderer, etc. Write the entire plot down on an Excel worksheet, maybe draw a flow chart, and then start writing. You would actually end up writing a lot more pages than just one page.
So, Ravi, the one thing I have to say about the answer is that it just reminds us that at the heart of it, you are an engineer and a banker. Even in writing, it had to be an Excel sheet with flowcharts. But I think it's a very useful tool for Nagaraj. I'm quite sure it is.
Deepak, most of the people actually plot their stories on Excel and on flowcharts. Okay, most of the authors that I know. In fact, I was reading about Sophie Hanna, who
Yeah.
writes Agatha Christie novels now, uh, and Hercule Poirot novels now, and she apparently plots her entire novel in about 20, 25, 30 pages. And actually, once she's sure about the plot, is when she starts writing the entire novel. I think that's exactly what youngsters should do, or people can't, who are probably starting off, should do. And I don't write that way. I actually am a more of I just pick up my laptop and start typing, and then one page leads to the other. I don't plot my stories, but most of the people who are well organized actually plot it, and then I think that's a good way to write,
Yeah.
especially
So,
thriller.
great question, Nagaraj. And I'm sure you've had a short but very useful masterclass from Ravi himself. So the next question is particularly interesting because it just might pave the way for our next theme for today's session. And this is from, I mean, he just calls himself Khan.
Hmm.
So Mr. Khan says, "Hi, sir. Reading or writing as a habit are not strongly inculcated in children across schools or at home. Do you think authors together as a fraternity could create a grassroots program or help mentor young ones to develop this enthusiasm?" So, this was, in fact, Ravi, one question that I had for you. So, maybe let's just bring it up and hear from you that what are your thoughts on this?
I can go on this, but I will try to keep it short. Uh, I think India as a nation does not read. Okay, contrary to what people say, and sometimes publishers can kind of challenge me on that, and we have a long battle. But India does not read enough. We buy books, okay, we buy books as showpieces, but we do not read. uh, and you look at the way, given our literacy levels and given our number of children getting into an age where they should start reading, we don't. And look at the way books sell in the West. Look at the way books are made a part of the curriculum. Look at the way parents love to take their children to bookstores, leave them in bookstores. In India, you would buy a popcorn, you would buy a PVR ticket, but you would not buy a book for 200 bucks. I can never understand that, as to why would parents not buy books for the children. Uh, and now we have the other challenges of Netflix and Hotstar and Amazon to deal with. But I think by and large, a few things which we should remember before if you want our children to read, is children will not read if you just tell them read. You know, you will have to actually, children learn by role play. So you need to sit with them. You probably need to read yourself, and that's when children will start looking at you and start developing the habit of reading. To never force things which you think children should read on them, because the moment you start forcing things on them, children will never read. So you need to just let them read what they want to read. If it's a comic, let them read a comic. If it's a part of the
Yeah.
newspaper, let them read a newspaper. If it's a cartoon clip, let them read. But whatever it is, let them at least start reading. That's when they will start inculcating that habit. Three, if there are interesting books, do not make them a part of the curriculum. Okay, don't make it a part of their course and syllabus in school, because the moment you do it, children will hate it. So you will have to make it fun rather than a compulsion if children have to pick up reading.
Yeah.
Two, I think, and if it's very evident, right? When people grow up and they start reading romance and mythology, because partly age, partly it involves very little involvement on your part to read a romance novel. You can skip a few pages, you will still be able to follow the story, unlike a thriller or a more complicated plot. So the moment children start reading and start getting into that habit, they will love complicated plots. They will like to read a lot more. And I think there is no point getting a 40-year-old or 50-year-old to read. You need to get children to read in this country, and that's when we will actually develop a perspective, become a lot more balanced, become a lot more even as a society. Today we are not.
Yeah, I think that was very useful. And as a father to a 11-year-old daughter, I think I could absolutely relate to the psyche element that you spoke about, right? In terms of how to get the kids to actually get going into
Yeah.
reading and maybe even writing for that matter.
Only-
So we'll keep a few questions and a few comments to that in the later section. It's now time to actually dive into something which we call down memory lane. It's usually a very popular part of the Starstruck format. This is a section where we dig out some pictures from our archives, which hopefully our guest, which is Ravi in this case, may not have remembered to have seen. And it'll be good to figure out what his reaction is when it comes to some of these pictures.
I wonder.
So, sorry,
I wonder what's coming.
yeah, just a few seconds on that. So, can we get to see the first one, please?
Where did you get this from?
Well, I wasn't there for sure, but someone has managed to do a good job. So, Ravi, tell us about this.
This is my family, which is that's my mother, my father, and my brother in the picture. The one who's the notorious or the naughty guy sitting down is me. And this was way back when I was 13 years old in Pahalgam. This is
Okay.
what got to be known as Betab Valley later on. I'm
Yeah.
sure you remember that. It's that point, and that's how it looked. My one first and only visit to Kashmir, to Srinagar, was
Superb.
this was way back in 1982, 83. Gosh, that looks, that's 35, 38 years ago. God, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for letting us know how old you are. But so this is what? This is when your family was based in Ludhiana, I guess, right?
This was when we were in Ludhiana. Yeah, that's right. My father was a civil engineer, and he went on a soil testing mission there for some building which was going to be constructed by the defense forces. So
Okay.
piled onto a Matador and gone in those days. So
Yeah,
and
it's a
travel.
beautiful place. We were there about a year and a half back.
Was it?
Absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
So it looks the same, right?
I
Almost.
mean, when I was there, it had snowed out, so I can't make out the water body and the hills behind. But yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. Okay, so can we move on to the next one, please?
Remember that camera hanging on my brother's back, on brother's shoulder, and it used to be those age-old those cameras which you would focus and then click a picture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, this.
This is another one of your repertoires, right?
Oh, I know where you got this from. This was an HSBC cricket match, and so I'm sure you would have got it. Uh, yeah, this cricket's my favorite sport, and had I not been a banker, I would have loved to pursue cricket as a professional. I wish IPL was there when I was young. I would have been left arm spinner for one of those teams. Who knows? As I said, my
Yeah,
life is a series of joyful accidents, so maybe this would also have been one. Yeah, this was car gymkhana when I was
yeah.
running collections for HSBC. Yeah.
True. Yeah, I
Yes.
think I remember that as well. Yes, I think it was those days. Okay, superb. Next one, please.
Ah,
Oh dear.
this roof. This is with you. You had a lot of hair on your head. You have a lot of hair now. Uh,
This is the lockdown mop look.
this was when Shoma was also there, right? This is okay. So
Yeah,
this is the launch of my first children's book. I wrote a book called My First Book of Money. There again, I wrote a book for children, telling them about money and introducing them to certain concepts about money, digital money, and how money evolved. Uh, and I co-wrote it with Shoma Narayan, who at that point in time used to be the head of marketing for HSBC,
that's
and
right.
this is the launch event for that. And I just love this book simply because writing for children was one of my dreams, and this was the first book that I wrote for children. So, and this was the launch event in Crossword.
That's right. I think Breach Candy crossword, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, Kem's Corner. Yeah.
Chem's Corner. Sorry, Chem's Corner. Yeah. Yep. Okay, let's move on. Ah,
Oh, this is one of my favorites. In fact, the thing special about this, the girl on the left is my daughter. On my right in the picture is my daughter, Anusha. She's now in uh, doing her undergrad in Berkeley, California. Uh, she This was her first event in the sense that this was the first time when a literature festival had called me and Anusha together for a father-daughter event. So to that extent, this is a very special moment for me, and I guess the pride shows in my face there,
totally.
and I wish I have more events like these in future. But yeah, this if you ask me, Deepak, which was my most cherished literature festival ever, this would be the one, and this session would be my most special of all the sessions that I've done in my 13-year history or as an author.
Yeah, I can make out because yes, you're absolutely right. The pride and joy shows on your face, and the fact that she's so calm, composed, and chilled out just goes to show the generation gap, right, Ravi? I mean, the new generation is obviously that much more cool about these things, but
Yeah,
she's very confident, I'm sure.
and they're pretty sorted. I think the
Yeah,
newspaper got the headline bang on, and they said "doting father sorted teen." So I guess that's what it was. It was, yeah,
true,
very special.
true. Yeah, it looks special. Okay, let's keep going. Next one, please.
This one. Uh, this is a very interesting novel. This is, can I spend a minute on this?
Yeah, yeah. This is your platform. Go ahead, please.
So I wrote this book called "In the Name of God," which was based in Padmanabha Swami Temple in Kerala, and this was Padmanabha Swami Temple is supposed to be one of the richest temples in the world, with wealth of over $20 billion, making it richer than possibly even the Vatican. So it uh, and in this book, when this book was supposed to be my first book, which was not based in the world of banking. Okay,
Hmm.
in fact, there is no banking story in the entire book. Okay, uh, there are stories about the temple. There are stories about idols theft in Tamil Nadu. There are stories about the diamond bourse in Bombay and certain transactions between Zaveri Bazaar and BKC diamond bourse. And uh, it just happened that there was one character in the book who turns out okay, whether villain or not, I will not say that, but whose name was Nirav Chokshi. Okay, and this book came out about 6 8 months before the entire PNB scam had broken out. And as luck would have it, the PNB scam had two guys called Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi as the two culprits. So this entire story went viral that Ravi Subramanian knew about the PNB scam earlier, and he had written a book about PNB scam. And the key culprit in that book was a guy called Nirav Chokshi, who was a combination of Nirav Modi and Mehul Chokshi. And Nirav Chokshi was a diamond merchant and a jewelry designer for the hotshot Bollywood guys and the key business merchants.
Hmm.
So it went up to such an extent that I started wondering what the hell is going on. My publisher got a few calls from authorities saying, "What is this that these guys know about?" The sad part is nobody even read the book. You had people tweeting, you had people, your politicians tweeting, you had film stars tweeting that, oh God, if PNB scam would not have happened if somebody had read Ravi Subramanian's book. There is no scam in my book. There is no PNB in my book. There is no bank in my book. Okay, that shows the level of leadership in our country. And but what fake news can do. But yeah, it was scary. In fact, all the news channels called for a presence on the shows, and I had to turn them down, all of them, and said, "Look, you want me to say something? Send me a questionnaire. I will answer on mail. I'll document it. I don't want to come on TV and say anything." So it became quite scary at that point in time, and all kinds of calls. So it was fun. The book had run through its course, and then suddenly it went back to number one on the Amazon bestseller list. So it served the purpose in some manner, but yeah, it was scary.
Yeah, possibly one of those scenarios where any publicity is good publicity, but I didn't know about the fact that it had reached those levels. So quite interesting, very interesting indeed. So taking a cue from this one, in fact, sorry, I think we've just got maybe one or two pictures left. Can we see the next one, please?
This has to happen. This okay. For people who don't know this picture, this the person in the foreground is your host for the evening, which is Deepak Swarup. And this was a party, I guess, in 2008 or 2007, 13 years back. We were celebrating a big event, and this was Jaipur, outskirts of Jaipur, in one of the hotels. We had called the entire North India team, and I used to run a consumer finance business for HSBC. So this is Deepak Swarup. And just for the record, so that people don't judge you, Deepak, uh, I know for sure Deepak is a teetotaler. So if he looks drunk, it's only on music and the evening. So,
Yeah,
but
these in these days, especially, just any form of substance abuse is bad. So
because
can't
Deepak,
even say can't even say been there, done that.
yeah. Oh, this was a fun event. I remember this.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this was Ravi's way of getting back at me, but I think I hope our viewers enjoyed the session on down memory lane. It's now time to move on to another set of conversations flowing in with Ravi. But again, a reminder to our audience: keep your questions flowing in. We've got a few more which we will pick up with Ravi in a couple of minutes from now. So Ravi, you spoke about the fact that this episode with in the name of God, was that the name of the book? Sorry, I just didn't get that one. Yeah. So, any other thoughts that come to your mind with so much of masala and the scandalous stuff happening around us these days, around current affairs, etc.? Is that something that's playing on your mind right now to maybe become a plot or a theme for your next book? I mean, you obviously can't let out your secrets, but But is that something that always plays a role in your writing?
I try to keep stories real. See, a good thriller must actually teach people something about the real world, right? They
Hmm.
need to, and remember this, that fiction has an obligation to sound real, whereas real life stuff can go anywhere. For example, if the entire Indrani Mukherjee story, okay, if somebody had written a book on that, people would have laughed at it, saying, "Come on, this can't happen," right? But it happened.
True.
So it's so when you write a story, you are obligated to make sure that it's believable, and people look at it and say, "Oh, okay, this can happen." Okay,
Hmm.
and I also want to write a thriller in a manner that it's not what is, okay, in the sense that not exactly what's happened in that sense, but I want people to read it and say, "Oh, this could also be an alternative." So I would
Yeah.
rather have my thrillers as not as what was, but what can be. And I think
Hmm.
that's where I write my thrillers. I borrow heavily from real life incidents, uh, but in most of my cases, most of my books, the story does not track the happenings in the life of one individual. For example,
Yeah.
it does not. My key protagonist in the book is not a real life guy end to end. There may be incidents which happen in the protagonist's life, which would have happened to five or six different people in real life. So the way I would like to put it is that the instances which happen in real life are actually the jewels. So I put them all together, and the end result, which is an ornament, is actually a manifestation of my creativity. So I pick them up from real life, put my own creativity, and spin a story around it, and then present it to the world. And that way it sounds real, and also it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
In fact,
yeah.
that's maybe another tip in terms of a masterclass from Ravi. And I think a customer or a person who had dialed in who asked the question, Nagaraj, I think this is yet another maybe a tip that you may want to take back when it comes to your writing, which is about stitching together incidents that are happening around you and maybe putting them together into one character, right? That's what you spoke about, Ravi.
And Deepak, I think people who want to write, I'm sure there are a lot of people in today's audience who would want to write. Uh, the biggest strength that you need to develop is the power of observation. You need to be a very, very keen observer if you want to write, because everything else can be corrected. You write bad English, fine, your editor will correct it for you. You have to be
Hmm.
a good storyteller, and you have to have a very, very keen sense of observation.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so Ravi, if you're still, I hope you don't have a connectivity issue with you,
A
but we've
good
got a few
sound.
more questions coming our way. Um, the next question is from one of our other people who have dialed in, and is from Mr. Vispi Rus Balapuria. His question is, how many drafts do you make before you are satisfied with your final creative effort?
Uh, Actually, quite a few. And if you ask me for a number, uh, the first draft is actually the fifth or the sixth draft, which goes to the publisher. So
Okay.
after you've edited, re-edited, and rewritten bits and pieces, you send it to the publisher, and that's probably the fourth or the fifth draft. But after it goes to the publisher and the actual editing process starts, uh, well, by the time you come to the end of the book and the book goes for print, you are fed up of the book. You, I for one, would have read my books at least about 24, 25 times before it goes into print. So that's the number which I am aware of. I don't know about others, but I'm sure there are people who read it a lot many more times. And a confession: after it's got printed, I have never read a single book of mine, because by the time it gets into print, you're done with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so it's now time to move into another very exciting section of Starstruck. And Ravi, not to put you on a spot here, but this is what we call as rapid fire,
Mhm.
right? So maybe I'll just pass on some questions to you, and let's see how you are in a position to maybe shield and field a few of them. So, any theme that you have not yet written about, but you would possibly be keen to explore?
At some point in time, I would like to write a police procedural, which I have not written thus far because I need to do a lot of research on that. Um Another book which I would like to write is a book on the armed forces, which I've never written. So apart from these two, I would like to write children's books.
Yeah, children's books is something that we must come back to soon after this section. The next rapid fire question: a book you have reread often and not yours. I heard you say 25 times in cases what you read your books.
No, no, I have. I'm a big fan of Jeffrey Archer. So
Yeah.
I've read Cain and Abel umpteen number of times. That's one of the best that you would ever find.
Okay.
And the way he narrates the story, the way he writes, I think just reading that book is a masterclass in itself.
True. Next question. In your opinion, what would possibly be the best book to movie adaptation? Indian, international, whatever.
Okay, this book, this I have answered this question in the past, and my answer to this question often brings about violent reactions. But one book to movie which I have loved is Angels and Demons.
Okay,
So
got it.
that's one of the best book to movie adaptations, at least.
But why would it have attracted that kind of attention? I mean, I'm sure our audience is curious to know.
Because a lot of people feel that uh, when you adapt a book to a movie, a lot of it is left out, and a lot of it is indeed left out from Angels and Demons when they have adapted the book into a movie. But and there are a lot of people who didn't like that movie at all because of various reasons, including the violence and the gory depictions. But I loved it,
Yeah.
and it's not the same
If my memory serves me right, it's Tom Hanks who plays the protagonist, right? Is that the movie? Yeah. Maybe he also added to the
appeal.
aura around that book and the appeal of that particular movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant.
One of my favorite movies as well. I haven't read the book though. Okay, next question. What's possibly your most memorable fan moment? And don't scandalize this, please.
No, in fact, I the most memorable fan moment happened very recently. But before that, let me also paraphrase this. I don't think authors have fans. Okay,
Hmm?
authors have appreciative readers, and I think the moment we authors kind of confuse that with fans, I think that's the start of our downfall. So we have to be very careful about that. But yes, the one feedback, one review which I loved a lot was from an 11-year-old boy who read uh, my my first book of money, and
Hmm.
came back and sent me a handwritten note, and that handwritten note is actually up on my Instagram page. A couple of months back it went up, and he says that, look, thank you very much for your book. Because of your book, I'm able to understand half the terms that my father uses on his Zoom calls these days when he's working from home. So and he wrote a long one page on what all he liked in the book and what all he did, how he budgeted, how he started budgeting for things, etc. So it was a beautiful little review written, and really touched my heart in that sense. So it was from a 11-year-old kid. I just loved it.
So, that reminds me about what some of us have seen with our children in the last few months, and bankers particularly on Zoom calls. Because especially for those of us on the lending side,
Mm.
most of our kids have learned this long term called moratorium
Yeah,
because that's something which has possibly been most spoken about. And I mean, lots of our kids have actually, when we exchange notes in our maybe our weekly huddles, etc. This comes up as a joke quite often that our kids now know what moratorium possibly is. But yeah, these are maybe the times and lives we live in these days.
my daughter once tweeted after hearing a couple of calls saying, "And my parents tell me not to abuse." So
but yeah, no cuss words on this show for sure. And I know you're
Absolutely.
not getting there, Ravi. Okay, last question as part of rapid fire. Your favorite IPL team and why?
My favorite IPL team, um, long back, used to be Rajasthan. That's when Rahul Dravid used to be the captain of the team.
Yeah.
Then it changed to Delhi, and now it stays as Delhi. So my favorite IPL team is Delhi because of a few players there, and which include Ajinkya Rahane, which include Prithvi Shaw, which include Ashwin, and a few others. Um, Second best favorite team is Rajasthan, and if these two teams are not playing, I support Mumbai Indians.
Okay. Proud Mumbaikar in which case. So thanks, Ravi. Fantastic rapid fire. And we now take on one more question from our audience. Manu Sharma asks a question that any movies or series that are in the pipeline based on your books, and who would be the most suited actor as per you to be directed basis any of your books' main characters?
Okay, so one of my books, which is strangely the romance that I wrote, a book called The Bestseller She Wrote, uh, will feature on Amazon sometime next year. So it's been picked up by one of the production houses in Bombay, and work is in progress. That should see light of day sometime during middle of next year. Uh,
Okay.
so I can't talk more about it because of obvious reasons, but the casting's been finalized and they're going to shoot soon. Uh, I've also sold my rights to three of my books, which include Don't Tell the Governor and In the Name of God, and God is a Gamer, which was a Bitcoin thriller, to one of the leading production houses in Bombay. And but I don't know when they're going to make it into a movie, because my view on all these things is, if somebody is paying you money to buy a book, buy the rights for your book, you take your money and scoot. So don't get emotionally involved in getting the movie made, getting the book made, converted, and adapted, because invariably it'll be their view which will actually hold, simply because they are putting the money behind it. So, and
Yeah.
commercials involved are very very high. So obviously, if you have a view, it may or may not count. So my view is sell the book and you can make your money and go. But in this particular book of bestseller she wrote, I know that's coming out in September. The other three I don't know.
And
Uh,
you said it's coming out on Amazon Prime, did you?
that's right.
Fantastic. Okay. Sorry, you were saying something else.
The web series coming out on Amazon Prime. The character that I would like to play the role of RBI governor in my book, the Don't Tell the Governor, which was based on the life of an RBI
Yeah.
governor, alleged license, was actually it was Irfan Khan. Okay, but given that is no longer with us, the second best option would be, of course, Mr. Shah Rukh Khan as the RBI governor.
Superb. Fantastic. There's one more question we have from Nikhil Singh. He says, I wanted to ask you, Ravi, about your thoughts on reading habits changing during the lockdown, and has it finally increased reading consumption? Very interesting topical question.
Okay, reading habits may have changed during lockdown, because people have a lot of time on their hands and didn't know what to do, and locked up at home, they would probably, I'm presuming, would have read a lot. But if you look at book sales during the lockdown period, possibly because books were not being delivered and bookstores were not open, book sales don't reflect an increase uh, in at least book purchase. Internationally, in the US and in the West, book sales have really skyrocketed in this period, not in India. And but I'm presuming that a lot of people who buy books have a lot of books kept at home, which they would not have read, and maybe they are reading those during this time to just finish the stock of to be read books. Maybe, I don't know, but
Yeah.
sales don't reflect that at all.
Okay. Okay. So that's done with our audience questions. A few more themes to maybe cover in our conversation with you, Ravi. In the earlier part, you spoke about writing for children,
That's right.
and that's something that you would like to actively pursue in your maybe in your next set of writing.
That's right.
So do share some thoughts on that with our audience. Would love to hear about that.
Deepak, children are a very, very difficult segment to to impress. And that's possibly because their span of attention is very, very limited, and they do not give an author a second chance. Unlike grown-ups who at least read till 40, 50 pages before dumping a book, children would dump a book in 3 pages if they don't like it. And two, if they dump you once, they will never pick you up again. So you have so writing for children and appealing to them is something which, to me, uh, is a huge challenge.
Hmm.
And uh, uh, I wanted to make a mark in that space. So not because of anything else, but because I wanted to try it out and see if I have that capability in me or not. The first book that I and Shoma wrote, my first book of mine, did reasonably well. So now I have again started that writing for children, and I have signed up with HarperCollins for a series of detective novels for children. Now, this is
Excellent.
the first detective novel series that I would have written for children, and the first book comes out next month. It's
Oh, that
called
early, is it? Fantastic.
Done. In fact, the second book is also written, so hopefully that will come out next 6 months. But the first book comes out next month, October 23rd. Its pre-order is on Amazon. And what's really shocked me is that I have an endorsement on the book by none other than Ruskin Bond. He says that as a lover of detective novels for children, I would recommend everybody to read Ravi Subramanian's books. And I think to me, that's a huge endorsement. So
Absolutely.
that's
Can't
one of
get
the,
better than that, I guess.
and let's hope it does well. It's a
Yeah.
series of four books set in the picturesque Solan Valley, and
Okay.
these are all fifth and sixth standard children, and they resolve cases which the police in Solan can't.
Fabulous. So I'm sure parents as well as children themselves who've dialed in today should be looking forward and maybe block the date. You said 23rd October, did you?
23rd of October, and
Great.
I hope they like it. And if you like it, do let me know. If you don't like it, also let me know. But do talk about it, because in India, I think uh, conversations on reading and conversations on books are very, very important. So if these books can be a conversation starter, positive or negative doesn't matter. But let's start that conversation and keep it going.
Absolutely. I'm sure people will look forward to that as well. Maybe the last theme for today. Um, in your introduction, I mentioned that you've taken up to mentoring and co-authoring. And I mean, I'll be very candid. I'm not a big follower of fiction, but I guess there is a massive audience out there and a set of readers out there, as you like to call them.
Mhm.
So I heard that you've coined something around a theme called shorts,
That's right.
and you've actually picked up that as an important area of work for your for the future. So tell us about that, because I've been seeing something on social media, but happy to hear from you directly.
It's shorts with a Z at the end. So in fact, it started off because what I have seen in the world of thrillers in this country is both a supply issue and a demand issue. Let me elaborate. If you look at US, thrillers and crime thrillers specifically are a big genre, and they lead the market. In fact,
Yeah,
the largest segment world over. But in India, it's a poor third to romance and mythology. Now, I was wondering why is that? Why is that so? And the difference is also possibly in the way people write. If you look at international thrillers, there are very few characters, simple plots, and then they go at breakneck speed from point A to point B, and the story gets over. In India, to maintain the speed, possibly, a lot of thriller writers, including myself, uh, we put a lot of stuff in the book. There are multiple plots which go parallelly and then kind of come towards the meet towards the end. Now, that is very taxing to read at times. And unless you are an involved reader, you may not like it.
yeah,
So, my thought is that possibly a lot of youngsters who pick up those kind of thrillers don't end up reading it completely because they somewhere lose interest. And
mm,
So the need of the hour is to one, give them simple thrillers which progress at breakneck speed, written in true international fashion, but appealing to the Indian audience, written in an Indian context. The second issue is that because thrillers are not that big a genre in India, the guys who have written thrillers and made a mark for themselves are the only guys getting published again and again. There is no new thriller writer who comes up and who's published by willing publishers, and publishers don't spend money on marketing them and giving them a platform to sell themselves. So uh, so this is where I felt that the industry has been kind to me, the readers been kind to me, have been kind to me. So might as well use that and do my bit for the industry and for the
Yeah.
thriller genre particularly. So I we started this series called Shorts, where I will co-author these books with multiple writers who are first-time writers but brilliant thriller writers. And these are short 150-page thrillers, which you can actually finish in one metro ride or one trip, one flight, etc., and then pass it on. So these are the two books in this. I'm not sure if it's inverted, but a book called Insomnia and a book called A Brutal Hand. Both
Yeah.
are shorts, 150, 160 pages, written with a brilliant writer called Jigs Asher. Jigs Asher used to be an ex HSBC employee as well, and he was a winner with in a contest called Right India contest, which Jeffrey Archer adjudicated him as the winner. So he comes with brilliant credentials, and I'm looking out for authors like him who can actually come on board and co-write these thrillers with me. And it gives a platform to new thrillers. It puts out good thrillers in the market so that young readers can actually read these and move away from maybe romance and mythology. Not that they have to, but maybe they can read this in addition to romance and mythology, and then start getting used to thrillers. Because the thing about thrillers, Deepak, is once you get used to a thriller or reading thrillers, you will never let go of the genre for life. So
Yeah.
once you start reading, you are hooked on for life. And so I'm doing this bit for the thriller genre in India and trying to expand the market. It may work, may not work, but let's see how it goes. And if there's anybody in the audience who wants to write thrillers and has an interest, please do get in touch.
Fantastic. So, on that positive note, I think the last 60 odd minutes have been a thriller for me as well, Ravi, and I'm sure it's been the case for the audience who dialed in today as well. I mean, your career, the trajectory has been mind-boggling, and you've transcended boundaries over the last several years now, and that to a large extent actually resonates with the theme that HSBC also stands for in India, which is beyond boundaries. So, thank you for coming on to the show and spending time with us, sharing your thoughts and your past history and your plans for the future with our audience. And a big thank you to our audience as well for having dialed in. Do stay tuned for future shows of Starstruck. The episode number 22 will be coming your way very soon. And on that note, thank you for joining. Have a great weekend. Thanks once again, Ravi, and thanks everybody.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you for having me on this show. It was a great pleasure. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.